Welcome to the Reclaim Leader podcast. I'm Jason Tucker.
And I'm Jesse Skiffington.
We're two pastors in the trenches who are passionate about church health for greater gospel impact.
We share the ups and downs of ministry, strategies that worked for us,
and some that didn't.
Best practices and practical tools for church leadership.
The goal, to help all of our churches flourish. Let's get started.
See another sunrise, sing a little song.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Reclaim Leader podcast. It is so good to be here again, and welcome all new listeners who are with us for the first time checking us out. We're really glad that you're here listening, and for those who've been with us on the whole ride, we are almost to 400 episodes, Jesse. It's crazy. Like a couple of weeks, we will be celebrating episode 400, and it's kind of amazing we've been talking this long, but it just shows that you don't run out of things to talk about when you are in church revitalization or working toward church health.
Totally.
There seems to be an endless number of targets, Jesse.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. And when you're working in the trenches of ministry, I think it's not only that there's a lot of targets to aim at, it's that it's important to process along the way and to keep even coming back to stuff you already know, you've already talked about, but you need to be reminded of. And I would say as much as anything, we spend a lot of time doing that, reminding each other of what we ought to be doing or what does work or things to look out for. And we're kind of doing something like that today. We're kind of visiting some topics that we go, well, yeah, of course, but we want to make sure we're bringing those to mind, keeping them on kind of the radar, make sure that we're keeping an eye on these things in order to be really healthy, flourishing churches. And so I'm glad we're doing this. It's amazing, 397 episodes. I don't even want to know how many hours of talking that you and I have done. Like, I don't know. I mean, by your words, you will be judged. Isn't that like, that could be a problem for us? Teachers are held to a higher standard. I'm like, we've got a lot of targets to aim at coming back our way. So we'll see.
Well, and if there are some young leaders listening, I know we do have some who are listening, and you're just maybe new in your church or new in your seat at church, and you're trying to figure out there are so many targets. Where do I spend my time? Where do I spend my energy? I don't know which one to tackle first. And right. I always try to encourage people, no matter where you are in ministry, maybe you're not sure what's next, just pick something. I mean, truly, like it doesn't have to be overly complicated, but these questions we're going to talk about today are designed to help you think about what could be some areas that you can focus on that will trend your church toward getting healthier. So that's really the goal of what we're doing today. And before we get started, I just want to thank folks who are leaving us reviews and ratings on where you get your podcast. I love reading the reviews. So keep them coming, man. It's how people find us and know about our podcast. And I just want to thank all the guests that we've had recently. They've been really great. They really knocked it out of the park for us. And it's been really fun getting to talk ministry and life with everyone. So I don't know. It's been a really good season and a lot of fun talking about this. So thanks everyone for being a part of it. So let's rock it. Let's get into this. 5 questions. It only takes 5 questions, Jesse. Who knew?
That's right.
I love these podcast episodes.
And there's a subset of 100 questions each underneath.
It's like, well, and truth be told, each one of my bullet points has about 7 or 8 questions.
Right. It can't help it, right?
So,
yeah. I love it.
50 doesn't sound very exciting, but that's just it. Podcast episodes are meant to be, kind of short and sweet, and 7 things, 5 things, 10 things, whatever. But hopefully this will help you get started.
That's right. Kind of sparks the interest, right? Or goes, oh, that's the thing that I need to focus on. So I'm glad we're doing it this way. Let's jump in.
Let's do it.
Things? We're going kind of big picture, 50,000 foot level, but we'll drill down a little bit.
Yeah. And this first question is directly related to our last episode 396, when we talked about your church's culture. And why that is so important. Maybe it's even more important than your actual strategy, because without the culture, the strategies won't really work as well. And a lot of your ministry strategy comes from the culture that you're trying to become or trying to create. So question number 1, how is the culture of your church helping or hindering the mission? How is the culture of your church helping or hindering the mission? So I mean, you can think of a lot of examples. Here at Tower Hill, when I first got here, it was just a different culture. It was more buttoned up. It was more formal.
Mhm.
And I don't think we were as good at welcoming folks into church on a Sunday morning. That's just one area I was thinking about, that
Mhm.
we created a whole guest services team. And Suzanne, she was a big game
Yeah.
changer for us. We talked to Suzanne a couple months ago. But I think for us, we pretty much had people handing out bulletins and saying hello, good morning,
Right.
which was fine. But the culture wasn't helping us get to our mission. So what it wasn't doing was helping people feel truly welcome. It was saying like niceties when they walked in the building, but it wasn't really taking care to think, what kind of environment are we creating for them when they come in? Is it easy or hard as a new person to know what to do and where to go? Is it a soft landing, or does it feel like I'm exposed as the new person in the church? And
Mhm.
how are we inviting them to engage in the life of the church after this,
Right.
coming back, or what does that look like? And I think the culture, because it was very, it was just expected that guests would figure it out, I think.
Yep.
Because that's how it always used to work. And what we had to do was change that culture, because we discovered that culture was hindering the mission.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's probably not an uncommon culture problem or challenge that churches face, is we just assume that people know what to do, where to go, and all the things. And you can be a welcoming church and still not do a very good job of integrating people into the life of the church. So it's not a knock on the friendliness. It's a problem of a system or a culture that supports moving from a guest to now fully engaged in the life of the church. So you guys had to work on that, and I imagine it took some vision, some planning, some strategy to shape the culture. And sometimes culture is shaped by the things we do, and other times it's shaped by the way that the leader begins to talk, or to help people see the thing that we're trying to do and understand the why behind our warm welcome and clear pathways for people to get involved. For us at Marine View, one of the culture challenges that we face is that there had been a little bit of an us versus them culture between the session and the staff. And it was kind of like the session is the group that we sort of answer up to, and they're always saying no or second guessing our decisions. And session would always be kind of looking at staff and going, they're always going rogue and doing their own things, and who's in charge of those people. And it's always an us and them kind of deal. And so one of the things that we did early on when I was here was get our elders and our staff together for combined retreats and just spend time together and get to know each other and get to go, oh, we're actually on the same team here and we're trying to accomplish the same things, and we just have some different roles in that. So we wanted a culture of teamwork between our elders and our staff, rather than a culture of sort of oversight and accountability over against our staff, and then kind of cavalierness by our staff to go around the elders or whatever. So, that's just one example. You and I could probably come up with 30 more culture problems that we face, and maybe still have some challenges around some of the culture stuff.
Oh, totally. And it's a moving target, and it always needs attention. So it's not like you just set it and forget it.
Yeah.
Some of you of a certain age will get that reference, but anyway, how's your culture helping or hindering the mission? I think it's a nice exercise to just go through what are the different things that we could maybe identify as part of our culture, and then just ask the question, is that helping our mission or hurting our mission? I don't know what our mission is. Okay, well, maybe work on the mission, right? So things to help spark ideas to think about, especially now as we're leaning into the summer. If you're listening in real time, these are great questions to start asking as you look forward to the fall. Okay, next question. What is your strategy for adult discipleship? This is an issue that I especially see in mid-sized churches, because mid-sized churches are usually drowning in programs, or a lot of carryover programs from previous pastoral administrations. And the thing is, nobody ever likes to end anything. So you've got about 5 different strategies that started, and they're all competing for time and resources and attention, and it may not be accomplishing what you hope to accomplish. And I know for a long time, my whole strategy was hope. I hope people are becoming disciples. Oh
man, you know what my strategy was early on? Count on the discipleship that people got somewhere else before they came here.
Yeah. By the way, valid strategy, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah.
But this is an area a lot of churches are stuck in because we haven't given it a lot of thought. I don't know if there's any blame for that. I just think you sort of assume discipleship is happening, but once we get clear on a discipleship strategy, I feel like everything else starts to fall into place. We get greater focus on the whole picture of the life of the church because, at least in my view, everything is discipleship. So if we framed everything we do as a church within the context of discipleship, so where people are on their journey toward Jesus and how do we help them take a step in that journey, I think all the programming, the events, it all gets greater, it crystallizes. And I think makes everything else easier because the clearer it is, the better.
Yeah. Yeah. I think one of the things that, and I imagine a lot of our listeners, you guys are tuning in, are going to get this concept, but it's thinking of the whole thing as discipleship, right? All of it is some way helping us to grow as followers of Jesus or to learn something or apply something in our faith rather than a program of the church. And I think the older models maybe where it's a program where you learn some things and maybe learn some what to do kinds of classes around, your growing faith. But it was kind of a program, or one aspect of the church was called discipleship, when really the whole of the Christian life is discipleship. And so how do we see all the things we're doing as steps in the pathway of following in the way of Jesus and growing in that? So, you often say something like, we think about pathways, not programs for discipleship. And we're thinking in terms of next steps and opportunities to help people to take steps to grow and mature in their life as a disciple of Jesus.
Yeah. And if you go to episodes 338 through 340, we talk a lot about discipleship there if you want to go back and kind of dig in a little more. Another wonderful tool that we adapted from North Point, Andy Stanley's church, is the idea of discipleship as the church is the home, with the neighborhood, the foyer, the living room, and the kitchen. Many of you, if you've been listening to us for a while, we've used this a lot, but just a quick review of what that means. It means we sort of treat discipleship, it's sort of evangelism's mixed in there, but discipleship is how are we reaching to those who are not in the life of the church, not in the home yet? How do we go into the neighborhood and start discipleship pathways there? Then we want to invite them into the foyer. We get to know them. The foyer for us is a Sunday morning. They come on a Sunday morning, and then it's how do we invite them to take a step further into the house, into the living room, and maybe that's a fellowship event or a service opportunity or something like that, an easy next thing to be invited to that's fairly low risk. And then maybe hop into a small group, and that leads you closer into the kitchen where the real intimacy of the family happens, where real relationships are fostered and nurtured, and you laugh and you cry together. And then it's about how do we take those who we are now kind of in that family and equip them to be the next leaders to go out into the neighborhood, to bring people to the foyer, et cetera. So it's a wonderful model. And what's been helpful for that is it helps our whole congregation understand what we're doing.
Yeah.
And
I think it's
like without it, it's hard.
And you articulate it, and you can use whatever words you want. Like we talk about our discipleship pathways as connecting, learning, serving, leading. I mean, those aren't the right words. They're only words. It's just a way that we say, hey, we want you to connect. And part of discipleship is learning and understanding more about who Jesus is and what he means for your life and understanding scripture. And part of it's stepping in to lead sometimes for some people, and other times it's serving in some way. And so it's just a way for us to describe the pathways that we're hoping for people to take. And I think the home, moving into the heart of the home, is another great way to think about how do we move people in that life of discipleship. So it's just a good one to talk through with your team. And it doesn't have to be rocket science. It's not like this super complex thing. Just thinking in terms of, what are we doing to encourage growing faith here? And incorporation into the community as a place to grow in faith. So I love it. I think it's important.
Yeah. And I know that Saddleback they used to use like a baseball diamond to sort of talk about it. I mean, I just think some sort of practical way to share the same language, because the whole point is, can somebody who's been sitting in the church or participating in church for a while, do they know our discipleship language? Do they know how to identify where they are in that model and where they can take a step?
Yeah, we use a lot of language. I think this is borrowed probably from North Point too, but we call it going deeper and reaching wider. we want to take steps to go deeper with Jesus and reach wider with his love. And we think that's something everybody can do, whether you're brand new to this or been here for decades. So it's finding that language that everybody can get a hold of and understand as you're creating this strategy. So I love it, Jason.
Yeah.
Number 2, adult discipleship. Do you have a strategy? Maybe that's something to take on and tackle in this next season.
Yeah. And then number 3, how are you building bridges to bring the gospel to younger generations? So how are you intentionally building bridges? And what do we mean? We mean communication, cultural bridges, so that we can transfer the gospel to younger generations. What I mean by younger generations, I would say Gen Z and younger. So mid-20s to younger. How are you building bridges of the gospel there? Is it through your programming? Is it through your Sunday school? Are you training and equipping leaders? Wycliffe Bible translators, this is how they talk about translating the Bible to other cultures.
Yeah.
Is, first of all, they never do a word of translation until they get to know the culture, because they don't want to mistranslate. Think about in life of the church, we have 7 different generations right now. So roughly, someone born from 1925 to 2025, 100-year span, 7 generations that all see the world completely different. So how are we building cultural bridges?
Yeah.
And then how are we making sure that we are trending younger? I think it's the hardest thing for any organization, but especially a church, is we always trend older rather than younger. And what I mean is, are the people that we're hiring reflecting who we want to be?
Yeah.
Or who we are, or who we were? How are we getting younger voices in the room? And maybe it's not hiring them. Maybe it's just making sure that we give them airtime around the table.
Right.
How much of our budget is spent toward next gen ministry?
Yeah.
I think that's a great indicator. You really find your priorities and find what you spend your money on. For us, it's personnel and operations are 1 and 2, next gen's 3. And I would love to see that number even go higher, but we have an old building.
That's right. Yeah, I think it is, where are your priorities as you're thinking about how you allocate dollars for ministry? And I think one of the challenges thinking about the next generations is you go, okay, well, this is more of a mission than a like some sort of revenue engine for the church, or even a service engine for the church. Like, these are people we're reaching out to who knows if they're going to be contributing much to the life of the church for a while. But as you were talking about before we hit record, the stories of young people that we're pouring into now, turning into, going toward ministry or feeling called in that direction, and really investing in the next generations, not only for the sake of their own growing faith, but to reach their own generations by developing leaders from within that generation. So we got to create space in our life for those people to come and lead and serve and be a part of us. And I think our dollars and cents show us a lot about how much of a priority that is or isn't in our life together as a church. So I love it.
And also building bridges doesn't have to cost anything. I mean, it could be simply, I want to interview this young person who's connected with the church and start asking questions. Hey, what do you and your friends, or you and people that are like-minded, what would they be interested in? What questions do you have about Jesus and the Bible? I mean, do you just put on full research mode? I know you pastors, you had a lot of schooling. You know how to get into that mode, into that discovery mode. Discover everything you can about younger generations, and then try to figure out what are the bridges we can build with the gospel. Again, we'll link to a few of these episodes we've done recently, but episode 380, Helping the Next Gen Find Jesus. We had the Broken Made Beautiful podcast, young women on, so we had Lindsay on, who is our next gen director. So there's a lot of episodes we've been doing about the next generation, which I encourage you to be thinking about. How are we proactively, intentionally building bridges younger? Again, I think one of the biggest things in the life of the church in the last, 70 years has been the lack of bridge building and the assumption that everybody's just going across on one bridge, and that there's just a one size fits all approach to what it means to be the church and what that looks like to be the church together. And it's just not the case. And the people that have suffered have been the younger generations because they haven't felt accepted or welcome. So
Right.
how do we do that? That's a big one for me. Number
That is
3.
a big
Okay.
one.
Number 4. This is a very straightforward one because maybe you're thinking about these 3 and you're like, okay, these questions are maybe a little bit complex or nuanced. This one isn't. What are the metrics telling you? Maybe another way of saying it is everything that you could count.
Yeah.
What is it telling you? What's your financial picture? What's your attendance? What's your engagement? What's your Bible study sign up? What sort of small groups do you have? Maybe you don't have any small groups.
Right.
When you look at your budget, again, how much are you spending on Next Gen? How much are you spending on personnel? How much are you spending on, what does that look like? I think it's really good to have a regular dashboard that you look at. Metrics are not the end all be all, but man, you can't ignore them because they do often indicate health or sickness. And the quicker you can catch the sickness, the better chance of an effective treatment. Yeah.
And or on the flip side of that, you might be going, something just doesn't feel right. Or maybe you had a few Sundays where attendance was down and you're like, what happened? I think we're about to blow up or something, and then you go and you look at the numbers and you go, oh, actually, this is a pretty common time of year for people to be missing. And okay, so it's not dire as much as I thought it was or whatever. So just having, like you said, the numbers are not the whole story, but they're an important part of it. And we need to know what's the story that they're telling right now. And for us, and we kind of tend to think sometimes in terms of leading indicators and lagging indicators. Again, attendance being kind of a leading indicator. And if attendance is going down, but giving is still strong, you're like, oh, that's good. People are still giving. Well, pretty soon that giving is going to catch up with an attendance pattern and the same in the other direction. So kind of thinking about what's that story telling us about how we're doing in this service or in this program or whatever. And obviously you and I would both say we want to be careful. Numbers are not the most important. It's not why we do what we do. Absolutely. But we would be unwise not to keep track and not to be paying attention to those things. And they're not indicators of health necessarily. Just because you have a lot of people and a lot of budget doesn't mean health, but it tells a story that I think is an important part of the conversation.
Yeah. And I think maybe we should just name this. People start ignoring the metrics when they perceive it's not going the right direction.
Right.
Or to minimize it. Well, it's not a big deal. It's not, and they're right. But on the other hand, I don't think it's helpful to just sort of ignore it or sort of head in the sand.
I think it's a curiosity thing, Jason. It's like, what's that about? I wonder what that's about. And just being curious and then figuring out maybe something of an answer to it or going, let's keep an eye on that because if for instance, we have a class that we call Theology Talks. It's a great thing. It's been going for a couple of years, and we pay attention to who comes and how many people are coming. And is this still something that we want to put energy and resources into, or is it time to kind of shift gears and do something else? And so it can help us in our discernment too of what's working and what's not. And I think sometimes we're drilling down a little bit, but even getting feedback and asking people, what was your experience of this? How likely are you to come to another one of these? Would you prefer to see something else? Getting some data, some metrics that we can use to help our discernment too, I think is pretty helpful.
Yeah. And I'll say this, I just thought of this, but this is important. And that is to share the metrics with the congregation, especially when it comes to your budget or giving.
Yeah.
So we don't always do this, but every once in a while, we're trying to get in the habit of letting the congregation know in more real time how we're doing according to budget. Yeah. So really, so that we're avoiding these like 2 times a year where we're pushing hard to close the gap.
Right.
And so about a month ago, we created a sheet of like where we were, and we were about $30,000 behind where we needed to be. And we're sharing with the congregation like, hey, we're a nonprofit. We 100% depend on all of your giving to make ministry happen. And it's so great hearing about this life change, but we're behind and we want you guys to know it.
Yeah.
Before the week was up, we had one of our regulars who I didn't know who they were, wrote a check for $30,000. And I was so blown away by this.
Yeah.
But it was a great reminder. And we, by the way, we don't get, that's not like a regular thing.
Yeah.
Like someone just drops a check for 30 grand. And this person did it and said they wanted to be anonymous, and they wanted and he said he was going to give the money, but if we wanted to, we could turn it into a matching challenge for the congregation.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And just the heart behind it was so sincere. But I got to tell you, my normal gravitational pull is not to talk about money.
Sure.
And that would have robbed us of getting whole again, and that person for their own discipleship journey. And all of us who then were amazed at this gift and saw, wow, what a gift from God. So either way, we would have been robbed had we not talked about
like wise transparency is good, a good approach to it. And then I've also learned to present things that the congregation can actually do something about.
Yeah.
So if you're, in our budget year, our expenses outpace our giving until the end of the year, and we see kind of a lot more come in that helps cover the gap. And so what we present more often is what is our budgeted giving year to date, and how are we doing related to that? Not so much what were our budgeted expenses and how are we doing compared. Like, they can't do anything about the money that's been spent, but they can do something about where we're falling short of our target for our giving for the year. So we want to point towards things that people can actually help us with, rather than just information for information's sake, which is, I think, sometimes what churches do. They print the budgeted numbers every month. Here's what we had come in. Here's what we spent. Here's our deficit for the year. When really, if we focus in on what they can impact, which is the top line, I think that actually helps a lot too. So anyway, just some of the ways.
That's good. Yeah, I smell a stewardship episode coming. I don't know. I feel like this is.
I can't wait. Those are our favorite ones.
All right, and then last question. If you can, this is a what if question. If you could wave a magic wand, doesn't matter, how or anything like that, you could just wave it and this happens. What would get fixed in the life of your church?
Yeah, great question.
And the reason I like that question is it kind of sifts through the noise a bit, and you start to realize what really is the most important gap to close.
Yeah. And
maybe that's a good starting point. If you don't know where to start, you don't know what target to hit first, maybe that's a way of identifying the target.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah, my magic wand and Jason is now a co-pastor with Jesse.
That would be fun.
Yeah, no, but thinking down and, drilling into it a little bit and going, man, if we could just fix this thing or have a better system or a better approach here, man, that would make a huge difference. I do think that's helpful because it gets our minds going. And then I think the next question then is, what is preventing you, or what's the challenge in getting the ball rolling on making progress in that area? And that would be the question I would add to the magic wand question is, what's getting in the way of you making some progress towards that? And what would happen if you were able to make progress towards that and begin to fix that area? So I think it's an awesome question. Of course, as a wanderer and a what if for myself, I love those kinds of questions. I'm on board.
We could camp out on episodes like that.
We sure could.
That's right. Yeah. Well, I think that's enough to do some damage. But again, asking these questions as a way, maybe over the summer, maybe it's again, my favorite thing is just to go take some time, go to a coffee shop, go to the beach with a notebook and just sit and just reflect and think. And maybe these are some questions that help get it going for you as you're looking to the fall. Because, if you look around, you can see the hunger for Jesus and the openness to Jesus in ways that feel to me unprecedented, at least in my lifetime. It feels like there is such a possibility or such an opportunity for evangelism or for people going deeper in their faith. And I don't want to miss it. I don't think there's a more exciting time to be a pastor than right now. Yeah.
Yeah. And to develop young leaders that are going to serve the next generations coming up. Yeah. I would say alongside that, because I do think that the generations coming up are going to be more spiritually open maybe than generations have been for a while, and are we going to be ready to meet them with the gospel and have young leaders that are ready to do that work? So anyway, it is exciting. It's also daunting when, these 5 things, there's a million other things underneath those things. And, thinking about the whole system of the church, from our DNA to our fruitfulness and all the things in between, it's like, that's a lot that needs constant cultivation and attention. And so as you're hearing all these things, I hope it doesn't feel like a weight that's been placed on your shoulders, but just an opportunity to maybe think about one area that you want to kind of poke at this summer and make some progress in and think about. And, because we're all making our way through this and working in the trenches of ministry. And so we're rooting for you. We hope this is encouraging and just kind of gets the ball rolling in your own minds about where the Lord's leading you in this season.
Yeah, I think, and maybe too, it's a personality thing, but my favorite way of cleaning out the garage is I got to take everything out of the garage.
Yeah, man. That's the
and
way to
then
do it.
go back and reorganize. And I feel like there's a version of that for church that sometimes I just need to kind of get everything out on the table and take a look at it. Yeah. And so maybe that's helpful for all of you.
Yeah, I think so. And if most of it goes back in the way that it was.
Oh, it does.
Yeah, it's a little bit more organized, or maybe you're like, you know what, that can of paint can go.
At least I know where it is.
At least right? And so it is worth taking stock. And I appreciate you helping us do that today, Jason.
All right, everyone. Hey, thanks so much for listening. And I want to encourage you to share this with your colleagues if you get a chance. Reach out to us anytime, Jason or Jesse at reclaimleader.com. And we say it every week because we mean it. Ministry is hard. It is so much better when we do it together. All right, take care, everyone.